The 1940s was a decade that undeniably changed the global political landscape, playing host to the greatest exploration in warfare, atomic weaponry, and in stark contrast, the greatest exploration in diplomacy, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO sheltered the ravaged nations of First World Europe from Soviet tyranny by allowing them to explore their own democratic self-determination. In the process, the organization was forced to continually evolve as constant encounters with difficulty and nuclear tension manifested into a necessity for adaptation. Additionally, NATO established a strategic network of exchange that ultimately held First World Europe together in the wake of constant threat to their way of life. In 1945, after 6 years of endless bloodshed, the Allied powers declared victory in Europe. However, as the Allies encountered a ruined Europe, the thrill of victory died. Long-standing commercial ties, private institutions, banks, insurance companies, and shipping companies disappeared through loss of capital, absorption through nationalization, or by simple destruction. Additionally, without the fascist buffer of Nazi Germany, ideological differences between the East and West created a polar division in the continent.
There's great fear in the United States and Britain that all of Western Europe is simply going to collapse, and it will open the door to communist takeovers.
As a result of these concerns, the United States began to explore the development of both a major American initiative that could prevent the total collapse of Western Europe, as well as a strategy that they could use in their encounters and exchanges with the Soviet Union, an exploration that would lead to the birth of NATO. The United States found the roots of both their wishes in the Long Telegram, written by George Kennan explaining the nature of Soviet politics and recommending a strategy of Soviet containment, shaped by Kennan's belief that the Soviet Union would not move into a country if the adversary had sufficient force and made clear his readiness to use it. To enact containment, the United States formulated two policies that they hoped would restabilize Europe into a counterforce to Soviet aggression. The first of these policies was the Truman Doctrine, which provided the nations of Greece and Turkey with hundreds of millions of dollars to safeguard them from communist coercion. Following this, George Marshall announced the Marshall Plan, precisely constructed to rebuild the fractured nations of Western Europe. These policies forced a re-exploration of democracy in nations previously under the fascist Nazi regime, facilitating an exchange of democratic ideas between people who had been held as subjects to false propaganda. Consequently, the Marshall Plan and Truman Doctrine created a roadblock in the Soviets' plan to convert nations directly from fascism to socialism without use of military force.
Stalin concludes that first, this is a plan to rip his East European satellites away from him and put them into a U.S. economic orbit, and secondly, that the rebuilding of Germany is his ultimate nightmare, and he will not tolerate it.
In the gathering storm of ideological conflict, any previously exchanged ideas of European peace were crushed as tensions between the US and USSR blossomed into a Cold War. In 1948, communist exploration began to push westward. The Communist Party of Czechoslovakia launched a coup, introducing communism to the Balkans via bloodless revolutionary exchange. This forced the democratic nations of Western Europe to encounter a necessity for mutual assistance, and consequently sign the Treaty of Brussels. In the days following, the United States began to reach out to the nations of the North Atlantic to begin an exchange of ideas that would lead to the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty. The exploration of a far-reaching alliance based off the ideas of collective defense, mutual aid, and self-help came to fruition with the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty, symbolizing the United States' final abandonment of their commitment to keep their country out of entangling alliances, in exchange for a genesis of internationalism. Thereafter, NATO encountered criticism, deeming their exploration unnecessary, stating that it was poking a sleeping bear with an incredibly paranoid Stalin. Despite this, the alliance became a defensive mechanism against communist expansion. With the benefit of aid and a security umbrella, political stability was gradually restored to Western Europe, and the post-war economic miracle began. The alliance's linchpin of collective defense gave the Soviets an important warning that an attack on one nation was an attack on all nations, and that NATO would respond accordingly. Using this warning, NATO adopted the strategic doctrine of massive retaliation, which meant that if the Soviet Union attacked, NATO would respond with nuclear weapons.
The Western Alliance kept the Soviet at bay with a sole possession, eventually monopoly, of nuclear weapons. They had no possibility of containing the Soviet threat with American soldiers in 1949. They were all home, or most of them were home. They had no chance.
As both the Communist bloc and the Allied nations in NATO knew that one nuclear exchange could be catastrophic for humanity, nuclear deterrence became NATO's optimal strategy in fighting the Cold War. During this time, the Soviet Union also isolated itself and began to stockpile their own nuclear weapons. This created an instability in the Soviet economy that would lead to their demise. It also brewed a steadily growing level of fear among the world powers of encountering an atomic Armageddon, with both forces building up a more powerful stock of nuclear weaponry with each passing day. NATO then began to explore eastward expansion, adding Greece and Turkey to the alliance. Subsequently, NATO took in West Germany, further extending their sphere of influence. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet Union's new premier, responded with the Warsaw Pact, an alliance of his East European satellites. Deterrence, however, did not last forever. This was exemplified by the near-miss nuclear encounter of the Cuban Missile Crisis. In response to nuclear weapons being placed in Turkey, the Soviet Union placed their weapons in Cuba, expanding their nuclear range to cover major cities in the US. For 13 harrowing days, the world awaited Armageddon. But miraculously, the two powers were able to explore a peace via their nuclear shields and a constant exchange of ideas. In the end, the United States removed their weapons from Turkey, and the Soviets removed theirs from Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis provided a too-close-for-comfort encounter that sobered both NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Ergo, a period of détente began. Even with the Vietnam War raging, the superpowers exchanged their nuclear grudges for an exploration of peace. Détente would serve as a testament to NATO's versatility in the Cold War. In addition to a complete change of strategies at the onset of détente, NATO encountered an incredible difficulty. In March 1966, France announced its intention to withdraw from NATO's integrated military command structure. This forced the alliance to relocate its headquarters from Paris to Brussels and cope with internal ideological difference. After over a decade of détente, tensions once again ignited with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. During this time, the alliance once again explored expansion, taking in the newly democratic Spain. By this time, however, the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact were far too worn from their arms race with NATO to respond, and after a 10-year military encounter, retreated from Afghanistan. Through their all-important exploration of collective defense, NATO acted as a shield for the nations that were left all but destroyed after World War II. In doing so, NATO encountered many difficulties, internal, such as France's exit, and international, such as the responsibility of safeguarding their territory against a massive force, and balancing East-West relations on an atomic tightrope. However, NATO was able to prevail due to their close network of exchange, and in doing so, NATO predicted the envisagement of a just and lasting peace based on genuine agreement freely arrived at by equals. Due to the economic strain originating from the arms race, on July 1st, 1991, the Warsaw Pact dissolved. On Christmas of that year, the Soviet Union followed suit, signifying the end of the Cold War. In 2001, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time in response to the 9/11 attacks, beginning the modern era of NATO's effort to secure democracy. For 15 years since, NATO has constantly reshaped itself to fit the needs of the world it serves, and now more than ever, NATO will need to continually coalesce to overcome the challenges they encounter and ensure that the North Atlantic Star will forever be a rising one.